it up. Get the PowerPoint up. So I'm gonna have to cut this part out. Hello, this is our RST 170 final project. I'm Sloan Jacobs, and we also have with us Emily Hillsberg, Olivia Dye, and Thomas Pointer. Next slide. So this will be about explaining the film at hand, and the film that we used is Inherit the Wind, that was released in 1960.
So the film Inherit the Wind is about a man named Bertram Cates who is a teacher at the local high school, and he had been arrested for teaching Darwinism, which is basically evolution, which in that time was a violation of the state law. At the time, the teachers were only allowed to teach creationism, which is basically that God created man and that evolution would lead to people not believing in religion, so they didn't allow it. Cates faces trial for committing this crime. In his defense is a man named Henry Drummond, who at the time was a very controversial figure in the legal world, and he's actually facing the prosecution. And the prosecution of Cates is tasked to a man named Matthew Brady, who is kind of like an adversary to Henry Drummond. He was a noted statesman and also three-time presidential candidate. And when he comes into town, he's kind of paraded and everyone's really excited for this trial. It's kind of a big deal. No one really likes Drummond, though. They all like kind of Brady. The case goes on to trial. Drummond, the head of the defense, is frustrated because he feels as if the case has already been decided. Any evidence he brings in, such as a scientist, to discuss Darwin's theories, the judge won't allow it. He's asked to withdraw from the case and ends up being put in jail. Through a couple various things in jail, he kind of asks for a miracle, and so they throw a Bible to him, and he kind of smiles and finds some evidence within the Bible to be able to help his case. So the next day, he goes back to court and challenges Brady in his biblical knowledge, and Brady ends up confessing that biblical passages cannot always be interpreted literally. Drummond then solidifies his point that Cates has a right to think for himself because of this. And so the film ends with the jury finding Cates guilty, but only of a fine of $100 because the judge doesn't want to be politically embarrassed. And Brady becomes furious and tries to do something about it, but becomes increasingly hysterical and dies of a busted belly. And the end of the movie kind of ends with him walking out of the courtroom with like the Darwinism book and then the Bible kind of balancing on both hands. Next slide. So the ending kind of is like a symbolic to the narrative that we're considering, and that is the discussion of Darwinism and creationism and their relation to faith. This relationship is considered because of the constant back and forth throughout the film about Darwinism and creationism. Its relation to faith is that the key to holding religions. Its relation to faith is that faith is the key to holding religion and science together. Darwinism isn't the end all be all for religion. Faith is actually very vital in Christianity because the Bible is open to much interpretation. Even when it comes to evolution, it is entirely possible that for that have happened in the Christian religion. The film has a very narrow scope of religion. It only views it as a one-sided truth or false rather than understanding that faith plays a considerable role in religion. And so I use this kind of picture on the right to show the constant tug between the two versus them trying to find an understanding. It's like them both wanting to be right. And the guy on the left wants Christianity to be the full truth, and the guy on the right wants, Darwinism and like atheism to be the full truth. And neither of them are trying to like look at the whole picture. Next slide. So yeah, I believe that this film is an excellent addition to our discussion of faith and human development. In the early 20th century, many people were scared that introducing scientific ideas relating to human development would hurt religion. Um, sorry, no one considered it, and the film shows us that the Bible left a lot open to interpretation. The introduction of Darwinism wasn't something to be scared of, but rather something to understand. Instead of silencing the ideas, it's essential to look and see how our religion gives us a higher understanding or better understanding of human development. A lot of what we have learned in this class is that human development and faith coincide, and our understanding of faith is being developed throughout our lives as we grow as humans. And the last. So to give some context, the audience needs to know that this film came out in the 50s. It is quite an old film and was a sign of the times. The film gives us evidence that in the early 20th century, they made something as simple as teaching evolution and crime. This was actually based on a real case in the 20s called the Scopes trial, which was a legal case in which the high school teacher, Mr. John Scopes, was accused of violating Tennessee's Butler Act. And the Butler Act made it illegal to teach evolution in any state-funded school. The thing is, though, at the time, it was kind of staged to attract publicity to the small town, and it gained national attention because of the nature of the crime. The trial fueled the question for whether evolution was inconsistent with religion, and the case was then seen as a theological contest and a trial on whether evolution should be taught in schools.
So, exploring the definition of faith, Inherit the Wind discusses the importance of religion as opposed to the theory of evolution. The media insists that evolution must not be taught in schools as it goes against Christianity. As seen through the character of Reverend Jeremiah Brown, the teachings of the Bible are to be followed by citizens of Hillsborough to avoid condemnation. Faith is seen through the creation stories and should be practiced regularly to reach the gates of heaven. We should set our hearts upon the Lord and the great things he has done for us. The characters of Inherit the Wind predominantly held onto their Protestant faith. The Bible plays a huge role in the characters as it holds the true meaning of faith that the people must abide by. The Bible is shown as both good and bad and must be the basis of the citizens of Hillsborough, but should not be their only source of faith. Faith can be examined through countless ways, including science. In this era, it is looked down upon as religion weighs more compared to science. Director Stanley Kramer uses the character of Henry Drummond to show the actual importance of science to the community. He mentions that the teachings of the teacher, Bertram Cates, as incontrovertible as geometry, meaning that science is equally as important as the teachings of religion. Faith is complicated because the film portrays that religion is explicitly one-sided, as seen through the character of Matthew Harrison Brady. His belief is that science will only damn individuals into hell. With this outlook, religion will only be depicted through only his opinions, and since he is a respected townsperson, the community will follow his beliefs. Faith must be studied together with science to see the overall meaning of the picture of religion. Next slide, please. So, continuing on exploring the faith, the actual meaning of faith is told by Henry Drummond. The control of the narrative impacts the audience's understanding of faith and development as it clarifies the importance of science and religion together. Near the end of the film, Drummond holds both the Bible and Darwin's Book of Evolution side by side, showing that the two teachings must be equally balanced. The story is intersectional as it focuses on the community of Hillsborough. In the article, The Power of Inherit the Wind, as a Christian right to strengthen its political activism and successfully champion an accompanying cultural upheaval, the role of Inherit the Wind within the debate over evolution has changed and continues to change over time. To this day, evolution now is seen in various ways that essentially helps one's faith and human development. All characters are essentialized in this film through the use of faith, such as examining the Bible and bringing scientists to testify for Bertram Cates. Each character was given light upon the topic of religion versus science. The media indeed gives a constructionist view of society, as a majority of the film focus on how science defeated the purposes of faith formation. Towards the end of the film, this was justified by Henry Drummond and his accounts of the importance of science for faith. According to Gad Gutterman of Johns Hopkins University Press, Inherit the Wind reflects on more than just faith and science. The film demonstrates that the life of a cultural product can include simultaneous positions in various fields. This can be seen through popular culture or the legal fields of society. Next slide.
So now we are on to comparing and contrasting. And Inherit the Wind has a large emphasis on faith in relation to the Bible. The townspeople and prosecution team refuse to consider the concept of evolution. They rely on faith to completely guide their life. Prosecutor Matthew Brady denies all explanation for the creation of life that doesn't connect to the Christian faith. And Matthew Brady is seen in the picture there being examined by Drummond with the Bible. And during this, he says that the Bible satisfies me, it is enough. And there's just this heavy reliance on God, and it relates very closely to James Fowler's mythic literal faith. And mythic literal faith is the stage of development, religious development, that the person begins to take on for him or herself the stories, beliefs, and observances that symbolize belonging to his or her community. Although typically a stage for children that are around 6 to 11 years old, some adults, like Matthew Brady and the townspeople, exhibit the structural characteristics of it. They exhibit the difficulty of being trapped in the narrative of the stories and the heavy reliance on reciprocity for help and forgiveness. And they just rely so heavily on the Bible throughout this. And even Bibles are given out in the town. And they also believe that souls will be damned to hell if they are not baptized or loyal to God through the Bible or the church. So there's this lack of room for analyzing and thinking about various situations and ideas. It's just very strict, very cut to the Bible, very stuck on religion. And the media is depicting faith as a hierarchical view, like Fowler's point of view, that faith is religion. The interactions in this film solely rely on the concept of religion, never anything else. It's just very stuck to the concept of religion. Next slide, please. The reliance on the teaching of the Bible and not Charles Darwin's creationism for comfort also coincides with Edward Wimberly's conclusion that participation in cross-generational relationships serves to mentor children, youth, and young adults throughout the life cycle in the wisdom of past generations and the community traditions conveyed through ritual. The people of Hillsborough want their traditions to be carried out through the youth to keep the teachings of God alive. There is community and shared values, and Hillsborough has built a foundation upon faith and being solely religious. Like it is they believe it's their job to keep this religion going, and it's insulting to them in a way to see this religion not being taught in schools when Bertram is teaching evolution. It's very upsetting to them, and it does go against their own laws. And it's very hard for them to see that because it's their job to keep this religion going. The Christian faith is supposed to be taught. Next slide, please. So the interactions in Inherit the Wind contradict with Bonnie Cushing and Monica McGoldrick's idea that spirituality is about being open to others and expanding our views. They believe that people need to understand the importance of not only making room for others in our lives, but also keeping room for our families of origin, cultures of origin, and faiths of origins as resources for personal development and spiritual growth. So it's about, being open to others, and like the little icon image there, there's a big X over someone with opening arms because they're not willing to accept other views unless they're strictly related to Catholicism in Christian faith. It's just, they're not going to welcome anyone that's different. And that's why Bertram is on trial, because they're not going to accept that he has different thoughts. And this is not what spirituality is about. Like said, Bertram P. Cate's lawyer, Henry Drummond, speaks about the idea of others having different beliefs, but it's seen as blasphemy. It's not okay to have these different ideas that aren't relating to the Christian faith. Opening up to others is not a part of spiritual growth and development. The town has created a strong foundation on the Christian faith and the exclusions of others. And they were able to develop good connections, solid jobs, loving families on this basis of exclusion. So it contrasts heavily with the idea of developing properly and leaving room for the other. Developing can be seen as healthy by some and unhealthy by others. It's up to personal opinion, not solid facts. they think they're completely fine in their ways and that it's how things should be, this Christian faith. And they feel fine. They have a very set town. They all have jobs. They're very stable. So it contradicts with this idea that Bonnie Cushing and Monica McGoldrick are bringing forward about development. Next slide.
Next slide. Critically assess the media. Faith is evolving not only around religion, but having faith in community. It does not have to be related to religion when talking about community. According to Gardner, faith is seen as instrumental in keeping personal hope and larger collective struggles for justice alive in the face of ongoing subjunction, marginalization, and misinterpretation. Young teenagers are searching for relational identity, meaning they want to find a group of friends or at least one or two friends in their life. This quest for rational identity affects the faith of early adolescents at its roots and the way they experience and image God. Early adolescents and image God as warm more than cold, as close more than distant, as friend and confidant more than as Lord and lawgiver. Faith is also defined for adolescents as finding acceptance, having friends, and wanting to keep getting up in the morning. In other words, young teenagers are seeking to find meaning in their lives. Next slide. Critically assessing the media continued. In the movie Inherit the Wind, the question of faith is very oversimplified. They are only talking about Christianity, and within Christianity, only the story of creation. This question being addressed in the court case has to do with whether God created human beings in God's likeness. A teacher named Bert left the church after one of his students died. He was disgusted because the reverend said the boy would not go to heaven because he was not baptized. The movie is looking at a very narrow definition of faith by focusing only on religious beliefs and customs. It is focusing on religion rather than faith. The faith and or context depicted in Inherit the Wind is not good enough based on what we know about faith and human development. What we should take away from this movie is that faith and human development are much broader than the very narrow religion that is portrayed in all or nothing way in this movie. Given the fact this movie took place in the 1920s, it is harder to comment on more recent developments of media and culture that have taken place since the film was made in the 1960s. The overall argument in Inherit the Wind portrayed faith in a very narrow way. It is also commenting on how people can get very caught up in their belief systems, such as religion, in a way that does not seem to have anything to do with faith at all. The movie shows how people can become fanatical about their ideas, and it seems to be taking a stand against fanaticism.
So these are our discussion questions that we've created based off of the film in our research. And we want people to keep in mind all the information presented before and this hierarchical view of faith as religion that we've spoken about. So the two questions we are posing are: Inherit the Wind brings forward the long-lasting battle of religion versus science. Should it be seen as a crime to violate a law that goes against your own personal beliefs? And the next question is, can development be seen as healthy from multiple perspectives? Can it truly be judged if people are coming from different backgrounds where morals might vary? So it's just good to reflect on the information given because these were very apparent throughout the film. So just going in on it, on information in the film and your own personal information that you've learned can be very good to analyze the film as a whole. Next slide, please. So these are our works cited from text. And the next two slides include our image sourcing, which was quite a lot. And we thank you for listening to our presentation on Inherit the Wind and how it relates to faith in human development. We hope you learned something new and might even be interested to watch the film one day. Thank you so much.